Welcome to the 2024 Year Ahead Horoscope for Cancer, Sun, and Rising. Now, I'm writing this for the perspective of Cancer Rising, but of course you can watch this for your sun sign and for whatever placement that you wanted to, but it's written specifically for Cancer Rising. So, how we're going to go into all of this video is, first, I want to talk about the major transits of 2024, just really briefly. I did a whole video of the general year ahead overview. If you want to know exactly what I think about the general transits, just for everybody involved, go ahead and watch that video, my 2024 year ahead overview. But just a quick reminder of what all of the major transits are. Number one, this year, we're having Pluto ingress into Aquarius. This is how we start the year, and it's how we end the year. Pluto's going to be in Aquarius. Pluto will be in Aquarius for the majority of the year. It will dip back into Capricorn for like 5 seconds. And then once we get to November 19th, this is when Pluto is locked into Aquarius for pretty much the next 2 decades. So this is our last little bit of Pluto in Capricorn. And so we have that. Then we have what is arguably, I think, the best, most like intense transit of the year. That's happening in April, and that's the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. I think this will be really exciting for the Cancer risings, but we'll go a little bit more into what it's going to mean, of course. Jupiter's going to go into Gemini. I don't know how I feel about this for you guys. There's a lot to uncover and a lot to, understand about yourselves, and we'll be talking more about that. We get a Venus Cazimi in Gemini. Around June, there's a lot of Gemini transits, so there's a lot of 12th house transits for you guys. So the beginning, or I should say the end of spring, beginning of summer is really kind of confusing and weird, and we'll talk about that. And then we get kind of the big meta transit this year, which is the Jupiter-Saturn square. We're getting one on August 19th, and we're getting the second on December 24th. And we get a third one, but that's not until 2025. This one, again, is very spiritual. Like, a lot of this year is very, like, a lot of spiritual exploration and meaning and uncovering of truths that might be uncomfortable. And that's what a lot of this is. And, of course, we'll go more into it. And then, of course, we have the Mars retrograde in Leo and in Cancer, which starts at the very end of the year. I think this will be pretty challenging for a lot of you. I don't know if it's going to be as bad as the winter of October of 22 to the beginning of 2023, but there's a lot to talk about here. And so let's go ahead and get into it. But first, if you want to support the channel, go ahead and hit like. Comment below what your thoughts are about this year, what months you're looking forward to, what months you're not looking forward to as well. If you want to support the channel and you want to get up-to-date alerts of when transits are going to be hitting planets specific to your birth chart, go ahead and download the Astrology transit calendar I have over on my website for iCalendar and Google Calendar. As you can see here on my phone, this isn't the best video ever, but these little orange marks are actually calendar updates of when a transit is hitting something specific to my birth chart, and you'll get the alert of when it's going to happen. And then as well, you can also get interpretations for it. And, if you don't want the interpretations, you can turn that off. But if you want to know what's going on in your chart and you don't want to open up an app and you just want to look at your calendar, go ahead and check it out. It's only $20. It helps support the channel. And of course, if you really want to get a very, very detailed synopsis of what this next year and the next couple years ahead look like for you, feel free to book a consultation with me at my website in the description below. So let's go ahead and get started. January. So January, we're starting the month off with Mercury stationing direct. What I really, really like about the beginning of 2024 is on December 31st, Jupiter stations direct. And then on January 1st, Mercury is going to station direct. So there's this kind of fresh forward movement feeling going on at the very beginning of the year. But throughout December, we had Mercury retrograde in your 7th house of relationships, and then it retrograded back into your 6th house of work, health, pets, routines, and coworkers. So there might have been a miscommunication with someone. There might have been too much on your plate regarding, work and your routines and, maybe getting a little bit lost in what you're supposed to be doing. By the time we get to the beginning of the year, that all kind of gets worked out. Like, you will have to backtrack a little bit, but hey, at least Mercury's direct and you're moving forward from this point out. Now, we get to the 4th, and our second biggest transit is going to be Mars ingressing into Capricorn. So something that I've been saying at the beginning of all these videos is something that's really going to help you understanding what this year is going to be like as we go through this video is knowing if you're a day chart or a night chart. I have some videos about this. If you go to my YouTube channel and you look at the informative videos, I talk, there's a few videos where I talk about the difference between day charts and night charts. But essentially, Gosh, excuse me. I just got done walking in the cold, and so I'm a little like stuffed up. But essentially, if you are a night chart, which means if the sun is below the horizon, so it's below the ascendant, it's below the descendant, certain planets are going to act better, or certain planets are going to be more favorable than the other. Same thing with the day chart. If you're on a night chart, Saturn is much more difficult for you. Saturn's transits are going to be a lot more difficult to deal with, and Mars transits will be a lot easier for you to deal with. If you are a day chart, it's reversed. Mars transits will be a lot more difficult for you, and Saturn transits will be a lot more beneficial for you. So when it comes back to this Mars and Capricorn transit, if you're a day chart, this should be pretty frustrating for the most part. However, if you're a night chart, I do think this will be nice. Mars is exalted in Capricorn. So Mars is all about fights and conflicts, energy and ambition, and it's doing really, really well in Capricorn. It's like you have the tools and the systems and, the schedule in order to do everything. But Mars is in your 7th house of relationships, your partner, your spouse, and other significant individuals in your life. So the way to read this is, if you are a day chart, you might be having more fights or conflicts with other significant relationships in your life. Mars in Capricorn 2 is just kind of like cutthroat, dry, not, too empathetic or, forgiving. If you are married, your partner might be more frustrated at this time, or they're very, very busy. And so that might cause some strife. But Mars going into Capricorn is like, there's a lot of heat. There's a lot of excess heat and energy going on within relationships. So you might be more active in relationships during this time. But that brings us to January 20th. And that's, again, when we have Pluto ingressing into Aquarius. And like I said before, Pluto's going to be here for the majority of the year. It will go back into Capricorn, but by November, it will fully ingress into Aquarius and stay there. So Pluto originally moved into Aquarius in March of 2023. And I believe it was there until about May or June of 2023. And I kind of want you to think about what was going on during that time, because Pluto was in your 8th house of other people's money, death, debt, shared resources, taxes, inheritance. And Pluto is about power and corruption and fear and transformation. Over the next 2 decades, there will be a very big transformation to how you see and how you interact with other people's resources, with your partner's resources, with death. Now, I can't go over exactly what Pluto in Aquarius is going to look like over a 20-year span just in this video. But really think about what was going on between March and June of 2023 related to that area. And was there anything that was introduced? Was there a vibe that kind of changed? Because you'll see a lot of that happening in January. Now, that continues into February, because in February, it's all 8th house stuff. And I'm going to pull up the chart in just a second to show you all this. But the first thing that we have going on is on the 13th, Mars is going to conjoin Pluto. So all of February is all 8th house stuff. Typically, February Aquarius season is probably your guys' least favorite month, because everything's in your 8th house, and the 8th house is just unnerving. Because again, it rules other people's money, death, debt, inheritance, taxes. And so Mars will conjoin Pluto. So let me go ahead and pull up the chart real quick. Here we are at the beginning of January. Let's go ahead and move a month. And let's go another 2 weeks. Get it back to Cancer rising. As you can see, Mars conjoining Pluto, we have a lot of things going on in your 8th house. Now, Mars is, again, fights and conflicts, and Pluto is corruption and power and fear. Mars conjoining Pluto is like a power surge. Like, Mars conjoining Pluto is, it's almost revolutionary in a sense. Like, there's like a revolt energy going on. And if Mars rules, inflammation and cutting and burning of things, it's in your 8th house of other people's resources. So there's this like burning up of other people's resources. If you are married, like your partner is really burning through their own cash. And if you have any savings, or maybe you get a little bit into debt at this time. But Mars conjoining Pluto is like, this extreme sense of power and, even fear or even corruption. And Aquarius rules like society and networks and technology. And I've struggled putting those pieces together in a very general format for Cancer rising. Because it's like Aquarius, the sign of like society and groups of people ruling your 8th house of other people's resources. Like all I can really do is just give you those, that sort of context. And then you would have to apply it to your own situation in your own life. But Mars in your chart rules your 10th house of career, reputation, and legacy. And Mars also rules your 5th house of love, romance, sex, pleasure, art, music, recreation, and children. So, regarding your career and your creative pursuits, there seems to be some sort of like power mechanism that really shifts related to other people's resources by February 13th. Now that continues because then we'll have Venus ingress into Aquarius and she will conjoin Pluto again, all in your 8th house. Now, Mars is more fights, conflicts, energy, ambition. Like Mars in Aquarius conjoining Pluto just seems like an overall revolt or an overall, like, hive mind swarm, and I think you'll probably see something in the news about this. But where Venus comes in is Venus is about fun and pleasure and enjoyment and relations. She rules your 11th house of friends and your 4th house of home and family. And so again, this happens on the 17th. When we have Mars, Venus, Mercury, and the Sun and Pluto all in your 8th house, there's a lot of things happening related to other people's resources, shared resources, debt, death, inheritance. And so for a general reading, it's like there's going to be an overall like unnerving feeling. But Venus conjoining Pluto is like, there's like something fun about it. It's like, it's like the friends we made along the way, essentially. Now, Venus does rule your 11th house of friends, and she's conjoining Pluto in your 8th house of other people's resources, where this almost seems like some sort of issue with a friend group or with a friend related to their resources. This might have to deal with family members and some sort of a living situation thing regarding an inheritance, regarding other people's money, regarding other people's resources, where Venus conjoined Pluto is just feeling like fear or anxiety or doubt. And again, this is a long-term transit. All of this Pluto stuff is a very long transformation of how you see this whole area of your chart. But we have a lot of 8th house stuff happening at the very beginning of the year. That brings us to the 22nd, and that's when Venus conjoins Mars. So again, all in the 8th house, but the way I've been reading this is, if Mars is again like fights and conflicts, Venus is like fun, it's kind of like drama. And this is somewhat of like fun drama to go through, or some sort of fun drama, some sort of exploration of something. And so Venus, the planet of connection and fun, is with Mars, the planet of fights and conflicts. Another way to look at this is, Mars rules your 10th house of career, Venus rules your 11th house of friends. They are together in the 8th house of other people's resources. So there might be a group of people or a network or a community that can help you with your career, that you have access to their resources. Same thing, it might even be a family member. This is your 4th ruler and your 5th ruler. Living situation, home and family ruler with the 5th ruler of love, romance, sex, pleasure, art, music, creation, children. Those 2 planets are together in the 8th house. So I want you guys to comment below if you're going to watch this throughout the year, like what ends up happening for you here too, because like I can just give you guys the context and then it's up to you to put it into context of your own life. But all 8th house stuff happening. That brings us to the very end of the month where we have this Mercury-Saturn cazimi. So if you're not familiar with what a cazimi is, that is when the sun conjoins a planet or a planet conjoins the sun, depending on the speed of that planet. Now, every planet has a cazimi once a year. And what that essentially does is it like rebirths that planet. It's like that planet's birthday. It's like setting a new chapter for that planet. Now, for Mercury, we get like 6 to 8 cazimis a year. It's kind of same shit, different day. But a Saturn cazimi we get once a year. And the way I've been talking about this Saturn cazimi is, Saturn has moved into Pisces since March of 2023. If you haven't watched my Saturn and Pisces video, make sure you check it out if you want to know exactly what Saturn and Pisces is about for you. But since March of 2023, Saturn has entered your 9th house of spirituality, religion, publishing, broadcasting, higher education, far distance travel. And Saturn is about maturity and responsibility and discipline. And so there's been this new sense of like, again, restrictions and limitations regarding that area of your life for you. And from March and June of 2023, there was this like introductory period into what part of your life do you have to be more mature now? What part of your life do you have to be more grown up now? Where are you now dealing with more limitations and restrictions? Then from June to November of 2023 was like, from March to June of 2023 was like doing the classwork. And then from June to November was like doing the field work. Like, all right, you might have saw what it looked like on paper, but now when you're out in the world actually doing it, what are the obstacles that you have to overcome and navigate? But since November of 2023 until here, Saturn has moved direct. You are now more comfortable with the new duties and responsibilities. However, Saturn is now out of shadow, meaning it is done transiting the part of the sky that it has been over 2023. We're on a new territory. So we're still talking about discipline, restriction, maturity regarding spirituality, religion, belief, far distance travel, social media, publishing, broadcasting. But we're now on a new chapter of that. And the Saturn Cazimi is pretty much like setting the stage for that. And with the Mercury Cazimis are some sort of an idea, some sort of a piece of information being transmitted to you. But the only issue is Mercury is like in detriment in Pisces. Like Mercury doesn't operate all that well. So it's like you are given a piece of information, you are told something, but it doesn't really make any sense. It brings more confusion and uncertainty more than anything. Now, Saturn rules your 7th house of relationships, and it also rules your 8th house of other people's money. And as Saturn goes Cazimi, that whole area is getting restart. That whole area is getting refreshed. Now, Mercury rules your 12th house of hidden enemies, the subconscious, fears, and phobias, as well as your 3rd house of, like if the 9th house is higher education, the 3rd house is how you apply that knowledge. And your 3rd ruler of applying that knowledge is in detriment in your 9th house. So this might be like, oh, you don't actually know what you're doing. And I don't say that as like a drag to you, but like there might be a click where it's like you think you know what you're doing and then you realize, I don't know what I'm doing here. That's what's kind of happening here. There seems to be some sort of major start relating to, again, spirituality, religion, publishing, broadcasting, social media, all that stuff related to relationships, related to other people's resources, and also kind of like, some clarity around like, hey, maybe I need to relearn this topic. Maybe I need to understand this topic more deeply. So that's February, and that brings us into March. Now, the easiest way I could talk about this here is like January is very hustle grind, like everything's in Capricorn. And then February is kind of the same for you guys. It's different. It's everything's in your 8th house, so there's like a lot of just other people's stuff you got to deal with. March is where things get a little weird. And then April is like you kind of just have to sit back and let things play out. But the first thing that we've got going on is this Mars-Uranus square. This is happening on the 9th. Mars is in your 8th house, again, of other people's resources. And Uranus is in your 11th house of friends. So Uranus has been in your 11th house of friends since what, 2017, 2018? And so there's been quite a lot of innovation and change and big shakeups regarding friends. That's the whole Uranus thing. It's like innovation, liberation, freedom. But Mars, again, which rules your 5th house of like again, if the 11th house is your friends, the 5th house is like what connects you guys, like your hobbies, drugs and alcohol, like your partying friends. That's the 11th, 5th house axis. And again, Mars also rules your 10th house of career, and it's in the 8th house of other people's resources. And Mars is going to square Uranus, where it's like there might be such a problem with other people's resources that really shakes up some friends, like that really brings some chaos to it. When we get harsh aspects to Uranus, things like tend to snap, like they're not bent, like they don't bend, they're not flexible. So this just seems like a really, kind of chaotic moment where something might break, or there's drama with friends, or if someone's borrowing something from you, they break it, or you break something that you're borrowing from someone, or you separate yourself from some friends, which is fine because there's some good stuff happening with friends here really soon. But this is definitely something to pay attention to, where it's like a chaotic snapping moment regarding friends and other people's resources. That brings us to the next thing, which is Venus ingressing into Pisces. We really like this because Venus is exalted in Pisces. Venus is about pleasure and love and connection and indulgence. And when she's in Pisces, she can do all of these things really, really well. And again, this is your 9th house. So spirituality, religion, education, far distance travel, all of the fun stuff, right? Now, the thing is with this is Venus is now in the part of your chart that you are having to be more disciplined and more mature about. And so it's like, while Saturn's here and you are being more disciplined and mature and responsible and you're navigating your limitations, Venus kind of comes in and allows you to have some more fun here, allows you to be a little bit more creative. Venus does rule your 11th house of friends, and she will be in the 9th house. It's also your 4th ruler of home and family. Maybe you go and travel, something like that. But there's something about this area of your life where there needs to be more maturity and discipline that Venus comes in and makes it more fun for the next, 3 or 4 weeks when Venus is there. But then we get to the 18th, and this is when Mercury enters shadow. This is our first Mercury retrograde of the year. And this is all in your 10th house of your career, your reputation, and your legacy. This is super important. A lot of April is career related, and even May is career related. And so this is when everything starts to really ramp up. Mercury going into shadow in your 10th house. of career, reputation, legacy. There's going to be a Mercury retrograde in your 10th house. So there will be delays in your career. There will be some miscommunications. There will be some changes. There will be some rethinking. And it's Mercury in Aries too. Like you might just be really combative and like kind of saying shit like, with your chest, not really caring about the consequences. However, some consequences might come. And so as Mercury enters shadow on the 18th, you're going to want to pay attention to this day because, of course, this is the degree Mercury will come back to and station direct at. So anything from here on out is like susceptible to change and delay. Then that brings us to March 25th, and this is the lunar eclipse in Libra. We start eclipse season. Eclipse season happens every 6 months, and it's kind of the most wild 2 weeks of a 6-month period. This is happening in your 4th house of home, parents, and living situation. So I want you to go back to October of 2023 and what was going on for you guys then? Because we had our first solar eclipse in Libra. Was there a big dramatic change, a big dramatic door opening or closing regarding home and family and living situation? Because whatever happened in October, that gets to be revealed again. Like, a seed was planted then, and this comes all the way back up. And again, the moon is your ruling planet, so the moon is a little bit more important for you guys than most people. And with this being in your 4th house of home and family and living situation on the South Node is draining and it's exhausting. And, you might be having to move and go from place to place. And, maybe you're not in good relations with your parents or your family right now. That all kind of gets highlighted for you during this time. And so then that again enters the door for eclipse season, and that brings us to April. By the beginning of April, we have Mercury stationing retrograde on the 1st. So again, delays, miscommunications, rethinking, replanning regarding career and reputation. So we get this Mercury retrograde. We're in the middle of eclipse season. A lot of things going on with career stuff as of this moment. And then we get the solar eclipse in Aries. So solar eclipse, in my opinion, solar eclipses are bigger deals than lunar eclipses. Solar eclipses are like, again, like ripping a page out of the book or turning the page in the book in a dramatic way. And this is related to your career, your reputation, and legacy. What career things are changing for you guys? Because that's what's really going on here. Now, before I pull up the chart, why April is such a big deal is not only do we get this eclipse, but this eclipse is in the sign of Aries, right? So it's ruled by the planet Mars. What's Mars doing? Well, 2 days later, Mars conjoins Saturn on the 10th. Mars-Saturn conjunctions are typically big deals in and of themselves, but the fact that this happens like on an eclipse is very omenistic or auspicious. And this is happening again in your 9th house of spirituality, religion, education, far distance travel, social media, publishing, broadcasting. And let me just show you guys real quick. Let's do this number. So we get the solar eclipse, massive change going on in career. And then 2 days later, your 10th ruler of career, and again, your 5th ruler of creativity, they're the same planet. So I know a lot of Cancer risings that like their career is very related to like creative stuff or kids. And it's also very like martial. But it's in your 9th house of traveling, spirituality, religion, and it's conjoining Saturn, your 8th ruler of other people's resources, and your 7th ruler of relationships. And there's like, again, regardless if you're a day or a night chart, both of the malefic planets are together in the 9th house. So this, solar eclipse, Mercury retrograde in your 10th house is emphasized by there being like a lot of restriction and like a shutting down or a cutting off of some major thing happening again with, whether that's you get canceled on social media or, your book deal goes bad or your flights get canceled. Like that's kind of how I'm looking at this here. Really put the context to your own life, but there's some heavy, shut off, heavy, like, you're stuck here moment happening related to, again, far distance travel, higher education, religion. Like, again, this is a very big shaking your fist at God, like really struggling with spiritual stuff. This year is a big spiritual journey for you guys, I think, to say the very least. And this is just the beginning of it. We'll get more into it. And so what's really weird to me is I don't really like to classify things as good or bad, but I will say all of this so far is extreme on a unnerving end. But then we get to April 20th, 420, super easy day to remember. We have the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, which is arguably super duper positive. So it's kind of a real black and white moment. And Jupiter, which rules abundance and fortune and faith and goodwill, is conjoining Uranus, the planet of innovation and freedom and technology and instability regarding friends and networks and communities. So, like, you know what's funny is I'm going to just make a wild prediction. And this is kind of like, take this with a grain of sand. But the way I almost read this is like, so the last two times the first time we got a Mars Saturn conjunction in the sign of Aquarius was like when the lockdowns happened. And it was in Aquarius, right? Like, separate yourself from society, like stay in your home. The government tells you to. What's funny about this is I almost wonder if like you get stuck in a different country. But Jupiter rules your ninth house of foreign countries, spirituality, religion, far distance traveling, and Jupiter conjoins Uranus. This is like you get stuck in a different country, but then all of a sudden you make a bunch of new, awesome, sweet friends. Like, Jupiter conjoining Uranus in your 11th house is some sort of like real big moment with friendships. It does rule your 6th house of coworkers, employees, day-to-day habits, routines, health, pets, as well as like work and labor. And it's conjoining Uranus in your 11th house. So there's some sort of like, and again, not every Jupiter transit is amazing or good. 80% of the time it's good, especially if you're a day chart. But at the bare minimum, Jupiter is showing you an area of your life that you need to understand on a deeper level. Like, Jupiter is about spirituality and faith. And since May of 2023, there's been a big spiritual look at, hey, what kind of friends do you like? What do you value about friends? What kind of friends do you want to cultivate? And Jupiter conjoining Uranus is like a striking gold kind of a transit. And again, with it ruling your ninth house of spirituality, religion, social media, maybe meet up with all your social media from around the world, or maybe it's something to do with work and coworkers related to friends, or even like going to the gym and meeting friends there. There's something happening there that is very exponentially big and shocking and like awesome. Like, I don't know how else to explain it to you guys. So that's really exciting. And then we get to, there we go. Then we get to the end of the month on the 30th, and this is when Mars ingresses into Aries. 10th house, career, reputation, legacy. Okay, so, if you're a night chart, we love this. If you're a day chart, it's going to kind of suck a little bit, but like it also comes with some sweet rewards, because Mars rules your 10th house of career, reputation, and legacy. It will enter your 10th house of career, reputation, legacy, and it will be in its domicile sign. It will be really, really well placed, and it's going to be with the North Node, where you guys are just like cranking, like, I got to do this, I got to do that, I'm ambitious about this. Yeah, Mars in your 10th house will be more fights and conflicts with like your boss, or just more drama related to work and stuff, but there's so much ambition, there's so much high energy happening here. And you got to think too, the North Node is in your 10th house. So like, since summer of 2023, you guys have been feeling a more impulsive, like, pull towards being more ambitious and energized with work and career, and being like, what do I want to create? What do I want to do in my life? Mars going into the 10th house with Rahu is like, really cranking up the volume, like as loud as it can go, to where, the speakers almost blow up. But it's also your 5th ruler. So being creative, love, romance, sex, pleasure, these two topics are doing really, really well. They are really, really extreme, but there's just a lot of energy. It's like, now that we've made all these changes going on with the career, now we get to really hit the pedal to the metal at this point. And so that brings us to May. May, in my opinion, is the best month of this year, especially for you guys. I think you guys really like May. I was talking to Gemini risings. I was like, May is kind of the best month of the year for everybody, but not so much for the Gemini risings. The reason being is, we're going to talk about these transits in just a second, but let's just look at an overall view. Number one, Mars is in its domicile in your 10th house. So yes, there will be, you get more fights and conflicts related to work and career, but Venus is in her domicile of Taurus. The Sun, Jupiter, Uranus are all in Taurus in your 11th house. These are all benefic planets. I would argue like Uranus can be malefic, but when it is paired up with Venus and Jupiter, how bad can it be? And the Sun too, I believe, is a benefic. And so there's just a lot of good things happening with friends and community and networking. So I believe May is a very social month, like getting out of yourself, enjoying friends, enjoying community. Really cool stuff happening here that I really like. So when we come back to the highlights list, Mercury leaves shadow on the 13th. So again, now all that career stuff is, all said and done. It's handled. We're moving on to new territory. And then Mars conjoins the North Node. This is all, again, all of May is not only being very social and networking and spreading your message and having a good time, but it is hustle grind mode. I mean, you guys are just pedal to the metal. If there are problems, those problems will be extreme. The Mars rules fires, and I just came up with this analogy in my head. I don't know if you know anything about like lithium ion batteries catching on fire, but like they don't go out. Like if like Mars in your 10,000 Aries is like, okay, there might be a fire that starts. On Rahu, it's like a lithium ion battery catches on fire, which is like you don't just put water. Like I was listening to a firefighter the other day. It's like a typical car fire takes about 10,000 gallons of water to put out, but like a lithium ion battery car, like a Tesla or something, when it catches on fire, it takes like 400,000 gallons of water to put out. It just doesn't stop burning. Some of them have to be submerged in water. And so I'm using this analogy as like Mars is conjoining the North Node, where if there's a fire, it's a fucking lithium ion battery fire where it is very hot and it is very extreme. So try not to like fuck shit up in May when it comes to work. But again, just things are really turned up for you guys with career. Very ambitious, going after things. And if there's problems, the problems will be a little bit more intense. But I don't see that as like a necessarily like bad thing. It's like there's more good than bad here. And the problems will still be like easily faceable, if that makes sense. And so then by the end of the month, Jupiter ingresses into Gemini. And this is where things get weird for you guys. So Jupiter is going to enter your 12th house of isolation, the subconscious, hidden enemies, fears, phobias, self-sabotage, repressed, unacknowledged parts of yourself. And again, if we look to the chart here, let's go ahead and get to the end of it. But just a real quick briefing of May. You know, for a while, we'll have Mercury go into, you know, your 11th house of friends. Look at all this 11th house stuff of friends. I really, really like it. But once we get to about the 25th here, Jupiter enters Gemini. Now, we get a lot of Gemini transits first thing of the year. Now, Jupiter rules your 6th house of ill health, and Jupiter's in detriment in Gemini. Jupiter doesn't do all that well there. And your 6th house ruler of ill health will be in your 12th house of like hospitals and asylums. So this year can prove difficult with health stuff. I don't think it's going to be like the worst year for health, but I think 2025 will be a lot better for health. But like there is an argument for there being more health issues, and it's not like health issues like you break your leg and you're down and out for the count. It's like hidden things, like something is internally wrong that might be like hard to pinpoint what it is. But Jupiter also rules your 9th house. So spirituality, religion, far distance travel, social media, publishing, broadcasting. And it's in the 12th house of isolation, alienation, the subconscious, fears, phobias, and it's in detriment. And it's in Gemini. It's trying to do two things at once. And I've learned with Jupiter in the 12th house, like you probably will spend a little bit more time alone, but there's a lot of time like reflecting. And it's like your 9th house ruler of like beliefs is in detriment in the 12th, where there's this kind of like, do you actually believe in what you believe in? Do you actually understand what it means to believe what you believe in? Because Saturn is here. It's like asking you to be very fucking real about what is your relationship to God? What do you actually believe in? And so we'll be talking about that as time goes on. But that leads us to June, which June is all Gemini transits. Number one, we have this Venus Cazimi in Gemini. So I meant to say this earlier. I want you to think about 2012. That was the last time Jupiter ingressed into Gemini. And what was going on for you regarding work, labor, health, and routines, and even pets? Maybe even coworkers. What was going on for you around summer of 2012 regarding those topics? And also related to 9th house topics. So far distance traveling, spirituality, religion. What was going on for you around that 2012 time? Because that was the last time Jupiter was in Gemini. Now we get a Venus Cazimi in Gemini. Every 8 years, Venus goes retrograde in the same zodiac sign, and she goes Cazimi in the same zodiac sign. So the last time we got a Venus Cazimi in Gemini was going to be in June of 2016. So I want you to think about May and June of 2016, and what was going on, again, regarding these 12th house topics. So what's the 12th house? Well, Venus rules your 4th house of home and family and living situation, and your 11th house ruler of friends. Now, what's really interesting to me is your 11th house ruler of friends is in the 12th house of hidden enemies, isolation, alienation, and subconscious. And so Venus conjoining like the sun here is kind of like a when a planet is about to go Kazemi, it's called combustion, and that's when it's like on fire. It's like sick or dying, and then like the Kazemi is the formal death and rebirth. And this is again in your 12th house of isolation, alienation, hidden enemies. So it's like I almost feel like there's a big friendship group changing here, or a falling out of a friendship. With it being your 4th ruler, this might even be like revealing of family drama that's going on, especially around parents. Look at that area. And again, think of June of 2016 and think of like summer of 2012, because those were the last times we had all this. But then we have Mercury ingressing into Gemini and it's conjoining Jupiter. So at least Mercury is going to be there. Mercury does rule your 12th house and it'll be in its domicile. So there's like, while you're a little bit more in your head, you're a little bit more, isolated and working through your subconscious. Like there's some clarity around it. It's just like there's a lot of hidden information being revealed to you at this time where you might be more reclusive, you might be more by yourself, you might be more in your head about things. So there's just a lot going on for you guys at this time. You can think of what was going on between, September, October, November, December of 2022 and like January, February, March of 2023. That was when we had a Mars retrograde in your 12th house. Now that was bad. You guys had a real bad that winter. This is not nearly as bad. I mean, again, these are all benefic planets. But what was kind of the information that was revealed to you? What was your lifestyle like then? This is definitely much more elevated, much better than that Mars retrograde, but it's again, the same context. So I'm just trying to help you guys get an idea of what something is going to look like. Then by the time we get to the 8th, Mars goes into Taurus, which is your 11th house of friends, networks, and communities. Now Mars is fights and conflicts, and it's in detriment in Taurus. Mars moves really slow through Taurus. It's stubborn, it's agitated. And again, fights and conflicts, and it's in your 11th house of friends. So again, there just seems to be like a bigger shift with friends happening at this point. And Mars rules your 5th house of creativity, love, romance, sex, pleasure, and it's in detriment in your 11th house of friends, where it's like either one of two things. You are into a certain hobby, but you don't like the people that are a part of it, or you're not interested in the things that brought your friends together. Like, maybe if you stop drinking or smoking and all your friends are like into partying and stuff like that, you may not be interested. Or, again, in order to hang out with friends, you're doing something that you're not really interested that much in doing. That's kind of the relationship here. But Mars is going to be a little bit more slower with networking and friends. Same thing, it is your 10th house ruler of career. So there is a little bit more slowdown. There is a little bit more like, but which is probably not that bad because we just had an extreme 2 months when it comes to career stuff for you guys anyway. So this is when things slow down and you do become more withdrawn. You do become a little bit more isolated and alienated, and you're just kind of exploring your subconscious, exploring your mind. Not always a bad thing. And this is when we get the Mercury Cazimi like a week later. Again, all in your 12th house still. And I think this is like the realization. Like this is kind of like if you're doing some deep inner work, this is kind of like when all the things get revealed and there's just a ton of clarity on the situation. This could involve siblings and neighbors because Mercury does rule your 3rd house, but there's some sort of like revelation or some sort of clarity when it comes to all of the crap in your subconscious. Some sort of mental reset is happening with this Mercury Cazimi. Like this Mercury Cazimi is not the biggest deal to me because there's so much other things going on, but I think for you guys, it will be such a big deal. So that brings us back to June, and we have Saturn stationing retrograde. So like I said, since the end of February, Saturn went Cazimi and it's been moving forward. You've been being introduced to new limitations, new obstacles, new ways of being mature about, again, your beliefs, your spirituality, far distance travel, higher education. Maybe you're starting college and it's a lot to take on. Publishing, broadcasting, social media, there's been more limitations and responsibilities there that you've been learning along the way. And then Saturn goes retrograde. And just like I said before, between the end of February and at this point, the end of June is like doing the classroom work. Like you're being introduced to new concepts. You are, learning something new. But then Saturn going retrograde from the end of June until about November is the field work, where now you actually have to apply it. And that's where the learning curve comes in. And so as Saturn goes retrograde, there is this kind of like, okay, do I actually believe in these things? How do I manage this? How do I strengthen myself? How do I discipline my beliefs and not be so, either pessimistic or overly delusionally optimistic? Like, what's the balance here? How can I trust my intuition? How can I rely on that? That's kind of a lot of the things that are going, like, again, a lot of this is very spiritual for you guys. So that brings us to July, and the rest of this, not the rest of this year, but July, August, September, and I mean, even October are really slow. They're not the biggest deals. Like everything is like from January to June is a really big deal. The summer and fall are a little bit slower. And then it's like November and December is when things get crazy again. But the first thing that we have going on July is Mars conjoining Uranus. Again, we can think back to that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction where there was like, all of a sudden I made all these besties and everyone's my friend. Mars conjoining Uranus is a big shakeup with friends, a big falling out with friends possibly. I want you to think about August 1st of 2022. That was the last time we had a Mars-Uranus conjunction in Gemini. My bad, in Taurus. And so if you had a falling out of friends during that time, or especially a falling out with like members of your community related to work, that is happening again here on the 15th. Mars just conjoining Uranus is like where you want things to be stable. They are not. Things get shaken up, especially again, love, romance, sex, pleasure gets shaken up. That's another thing I should mention too. At the end of June, when Saturn goes retrograde, this is your 7th ruler of relationships. So because Saturn rules your 7th house of relationships, Saturn stationing direct and retrograde are going to be kind of like bigger shifts in your relationships for you guys. But yeah, big shakeup here with friends. And then literally the next day on the 16th, we have Mercury entering shadow. Now, Mercury is going to retrograde in Virgo in your 3rd house. That rules siblings, neighbors, short distance travel, communication, and again, applying knowledge. But it will retrograde back into Leo, which rules your 2nd house of money and possessions. So this is something to pay attention to because Mercury is going to, again, come back to the spot in your 2nd house of money. And there seems to be some sort of reorganization of finances, maybe some delays with money given, what you're spending or what your bills are. Mercury does rule your 12th house of fears and phobias, isolation, self-sabotage, and it's in your 2nd house of money. So there might be some like fears around money. And maybe this Mercury retrograde in Virgo in your 3rd house is like, okay, I have these anxieties about money. So I should maybe like get a budget, make an Excel spreadsheet, like figure it out and learn better so you don't have these anxieties about money. That's almost how I would look at this. And we'll talk more about that as we go on. And then, Mars in Gemini for you guys. This is totally a repeat again of what was going on at the end of 22, beginning of 23. Mars goes into your 12th house of isolation, the subconscious, hidden enemies. And Mars in Gemini is just very like la 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 in your head, just like you want to shut the voices off. It's very like the devil and the angel on your shoulder. And again, it's also your 10th house ruler of career and your 5th house ruler of love, romance, sex, pleasure in your 12th house, again, of isolation, alienation, hidden enemies. So you'll probably be doing a lot more work from home, dealing with, again, like just the subconscious issues that you have with work, pleasures and stuff. Like you're just being like, do I even like this anymore? Do I want this? Not enjoying things much more in secret too. That's going to be a big thing. And so that brings us to August. When we get to August, Mercury again stations retrograde in your 3rd house of siblings, neighbors, short distance travel. Expect some miscommunication with siblings. Expect some miscommunication or a reorganization with neighbors. Expect, a change in short distance travel. This could be like car issues. That will, that's not like the biggest deal in the world in this case. But there is some sort of a reorganization here. And part of me thinks that it's mostly like about money stuff, and fears around money, but expect delays in the 3rd house. So short distance travel, siblings, neighbors, things like that. But then this is where this part of the month gets interesting is we have this Mars-Jupiter conjunction, which is still in your 12th house. We're not done with any of this stuff yet. And as we get to Mars conjoining Jupiter, let me do this. And then actually we're going to do that. And then we're going to do, it's on the 14th. Mars rules your 5th house of love, romance, sex, pleasure. And Jupiter rules your 6th house of ill health, routines, health in general, coworkers, pets, work, and labor. Mars rules your 10th house of career, and Jupiter rules your 9th house of spirituality, education, far distance travel, getting social media, publishing, broadcasting. And they're both conjoining each other in the 12th house. A Mars-Jupiter conjunction is like a blow up. Like a Mars-Jupiter conjunction is like, you put too much air in your tire and it explodes. You are trying to inflate something. You are trying to get the most out of something and you take it too far. Maybe not you take it too far, but the situation gets taken too far. And so this seems like a major falling out. this seems like just like there's too much stress. Again, this is 10th ruler of career, 9th ruler of like the spiritual stuff conjoining, 5th ruler of desires, creativity, and 6th ruler of like work and labor, conjoining your 12th house of like fallouts, hidden enemies, self-sabotage, isolation, alienation. So it's like something just pops off here. And that's going to be frustrating. But what's interesting is that leads us to one of the major transits of this year, and that's the Jupiter-Saturn square. Now, this is why I was saying this year is really spiritual for you guys, because as this happens, this is again in your 12th and your 9th house. And this is 5 days later. Like something blows up and then Jupiter squares Saturn, where on a bigger picture level, you go, oh, I don't know how to balance this. I don't know if I actually believe in this. I don't know what I'm doing. Like there's a lot of confusion here. And that's not always a bad thing. Like just honor the time that is this moment. And the thing is, Jupiter is direct in Gemini. Like your 9th ruler is in detriment in the 12th house, where there is some kind of like questioning of your beliefs, questioning of your worldview. If you are in a different country, you probably feel more isolated. It's also your 6th house ruler of, again, work, labor, health, routines, and pets. And there might be something that's not working here. Like you don't really like your coworkers, or, you don't really like the relationships that you have there. The work that you're doing is really isolating. You're trying to do two things and it's not working. Like there's an opportunity there for sure. Like that's the thing. It's Jupiter. There's probably an opportunity, but the opportunity comes at a cost. And with it squaring Saturn, which is your 7th ruler of relationships, 8th ruler of other people's resources, Saturn's now retrograde, where again, this is you doing that field work and realizing, the ups and downs of the job. Like, hey, like, it might make sense on paper, but then when you actually do it in real life, like it's actually a lot more challenging. And this is the moment where you go, oh, I can't do two of these things. These two things don't make sense to me. There's clearly a disalignment with my beliefs and my relationships, or my work and other people's resources. There's some sort of like cognitive dissonance, I would almost say. And the way I would look at this is, while you're trying to be optimistic and you're trying to see the best of both worlds, you're trying to have your cake and eat it too. Like with Saturn being retrograde squaring it, there's like this being like, it's like a realization of like, oh, I can't do two things at once. And I need to figure out how I'm going to do that. And this is something, again, that we'll come back to once we get to December. But this is like when the problem is being introduced to you, and you will not get the solution down until the very end of December of 2024. But I'd really pay attention to this. That brings us to September. Then by the time we get to September, Pluto goes back into Capricorn. Oh, don't you miss Pluto in your 7th house? I know you guys miss Pluto in your 7th house. It's only been there for 15 years, 16 years. So Pluto goes back into your 7th house. It's only going to be in your 7th house for 5 minutes. Again, this is about relationships, other people, individuals. It's not, in my opinion, it's just not that big of a deal. It's kind of like returning back to a nostalgic past. But Pluto is transformation, power, corruption related to relationships. Then Venus conjoins the South Node, where Venus will be in her home sign of Libra, and she will be in your 4th house of home, family, living situation, and parents. And there's something bittersweet about this. Like there's something about maybe you're moving at this point and you're kind of just looking at or for example, it's like when you're about to leave your hometown and, you do like your friends and you do like being there, but it's time to move on. Venus is about pleasures and desires. And when she's conjoining the South Node in your 4th house of home and family, there's just I don't want this anymore. I don't like this anymore. This isn't enjoyable for me. And this has to do with living situation stuff or family stuff. So really pay attention to that. But then the next day, on the 4th, Mars ingresses into Cancer. This is a big one for you guys. You guys are going to be pretty crabby. Mars rules fights and conflicts. Mars is the sign of, or the planet of the warrior. But Cancer is like the sign of babies and emotions and nurturing. And Mars, as you can guess, doesn't do well there. Mars is more defensive in Cancer. It's not on the offense. It's on the defense. It's more protective. But it is going into your 1st house of you, your body, yourself, your image, your identity. And so number one, just kind of be wary of injuries. And when I say injuries, like getting cut or getting burned or something like that, like a Mars ruled injury. But your 10th ruler of career is now fallen in your 1st house, where it's I don't know, something about work here where you're just you don't have the motivation, you don't have the energy, or you're really crabby and emotional, or you're having to be very defensive in work. I'd really try to catch yourselves not being too defensive or, crabby to where you're just ruining the vibe for everybody. but it's also your 5th house ruler of love, romance, sex, pleasure, art, music, recreation, and it's fallen in your first, where like certain desires aren't doing it anymore. Maybe you need to be in a more restorative state, but that will be important for as we get into October. So October, we get back into eclipse season. We have our solar eclipse in Libra. This is in your 4th house of home, family, and living situation. So again, I think the Venus South Node conjunction is like your goodbye party. And that solar eclipse in your 2nd house is like, all right, we're moving. There is something dramatically changing with the living situation, with home and family. Again, think about October of 2023. What shifted around October 13th, 14th for you guys? That's what's going on here. Again, a major shift with living situation and parents. Then we get to the October 4th, and this is when Mars ingresses into shadow. So again, Mars is going to retrograde in your 1st house of your body and yourself. So as Mars enters shadow, I want you to pay attention to how are you feeling? What are you doing with your body? What are you doing, in terms of like creative stuff? What are you doing in terms of love, romance, sex, pleasure, and career? Because Mars hits this degree, and you're going to come back to this where it's like, do you not have the energy? Do you not have the motivation? Are you just feeling restless? Are you feeling, really defensive? Like, do you need to defend yourself from something? Because the 1st house is typically a bigger deal in general. Like yes, it does rule like the body and stuff like that, but like it's kind of overarching. So really just kind of tune in around this time, because Mars will come back to this degree in March of 2025. But yeah, Mars hits shadow. We'll come back to this in just a moment. We get back to October, and we have Jupiter stationing retrograde on October 9th. This is where, again, very similar to the Saturn retrograde, this is going like Jupiter is like spirituality and religion, right? And when Jupiter is going direct, it's like, oh, you're seeing a new way of believing. You're being more introspective about your beliefs. And Jupiter going retrograde, it's like the same thing. It's that field work, like what's going to work and what's not going to work. Jupiter going direct is like, oh, it's easy to believe in faith and have faith in things when things are going your way. This is like a loss of faith in something. And that's not a bad thing. Like, I don't want you guys to take like, oh, this is going to be a bad year. It's like, this is such an incredible journey. Like, this is life. And I think this year is really a good year to get a lot of juice out of this, like meaningful spiritual impact. And as Jupiter goes retrograde, this is like, Jupiter being direct in Gemini is like, there are opportunities happening somewhere. And when we get to August and Jupiter square Saturn, you might realize, oh, these opportunities are actually hard to manage. And then as Jupiter goes retrograde, you don't necessarily have that faith in the opportunity. Like the juice may not be worth the squeeze, if that makes sense. And then we get to the end of the month. This is a lunar eclipse in Aries. It's not a lunar eclipse in Aries because the eclipses in the nodes, it's another lunation in the sign with the nodes. I'm going to call it an eclipse, even though it's probably not. So just bear with me, okay? I'm not going to worry too much about the eclipses in Pisces and Virgo yet. But it's happening in your 10th house. Now, this is the lunar eclipse in your, or we could even just say the full moon in your 10th house of career, reputation, and legacy. What has to change here? It's why I think this is a bigger deal is Mars is in shadow. Your 10th ruler is in your 1st house, and your 1st house ruler is like pretty much, full in your 10th. There's a big look at like, what are you doing for work and career, and how is that not lining up with like your body and your energy, and are you having to be defensive about it, and what needs to change? So that brings us that brings us to November, and we get to November. Mars goes into Leo. It's about money and possessions for you guys. Mars rules again fights and conflicts. And as it goes into Leo, it's going to be easy to burn through cash. But what is nice about Mars in Leo is that there's a lot of like, pride. There's a lot of like, hey, like, you can think about like early May of 2023. That was the last time we had Mars go through Leo. It will burn through cash. But it will be also be more empowering when it comes to money. But that's temporary. It is your 10th house of career. So now like career issues turn into like money issues. And this is important because Mars is about to go retrograde. That's a really important part of this. Mars goes into your 2nd house. Then Mercury will go into shadow as well. So all of this winter is like work stuff for you guys. You really need to fucking figure out what's going on with your work, especially because 2025 and 2026 are really big deals for you guys with work. That's when you're going to see all the advancements in your work and your career. This is kind of more of a year where it's like, what's not working? And again, what I've been trying to tell people is 2024 is a buildup to 2025. But Mercury goes into shadow of your sixth house of into your sixth house of work, health, pets, routines, coworkers, things like that. We will have another Mercury retrograde in your sixth house. So there will be this revisit of like, overscheduled, too much work, delays in your routines, or, maybe taking a break from your routines, maybe some, maybe you get sick during November. Maybe you need to take some time off, or just like a reschedule thing. Pluto goes back into Aquarius on November 19th, back into your eighth house, and it's there. Now, from November of 2024 to July of 2025, every major planet is moving into a new zodiac sign. Pluto moves into Aquarius, Neptune moves into Aries, Uranus moves into Gemini, Saturn moves into Aries, and Jupiter moves into Cancer. So this really begins like all of the major changes that we get into 2025. 2025 is a lot of changes going on, and this is building up for that at this moment. Then we get Saturn stationing direct on November 15th. I switched these up on accident. So whatever. I don't think it's really all that important right now. But Saturn stations direct in your ninth house. This is a you know what you have to do moment. You know where you need to take more responsibility. You've done the field work. You've gotten the hours in. And now you're going to feel more confident about what limitations you have with your beliefs or spirituality or religion, and feel more comfortable working within those parameters. Same thing too. You're going to know how to be more mature and more disciplined in this area. Being more of an adult in this area with, again, spirituality, religion, higher education, far distance travel. We like this. This is good. We want to grow up. Saturn is a good planet. Then, of course, by the end of the month on November 25th, Mercury stations retrograde. Like I said, there's going to be some delays and some, miscommunication with coworkers and redoing your schedule and things like that. But that brings us to December. And then Mars goes retrograde on the 6th of December. This is where, God, part of me is like, are you guys just going to fucking quit your job this year? Because by the time we get to the 6th, Mars will be retrograde in Leo. And let me get to the right chart here. And this is your 10th ruler of career, moving backwards in your second house of money. So this is almost like taking the pay cut because the job just isn't worth it for you at the moment. Or this is when you have to make some big financial decisions related to working career. It's also your 5th house ruler of love, romance, sex, pleasure, art, music, recreation. That is going backwards in your second house of money. So there might be some issues being more creative because there's some issues with money. And again, Mars retrograde in Leo is like tucking your tail between your legs, like really discouraged. It's like the cowardly lion. And so there might be like a lot of fear that comes up here, like, oh, I don't have the confidence, or I can't do it because of the money stuff. And that's going to be something that you have to reckon with. And again, once we get to 2025, a lot of this will make more sense because 2025 is really, really crazy. And again, this is all a buildup for 2025. So it's not like, oh, we just end the year at 2024 with Mars retrograding your second house and money sucks for you. It's like, it doesn't end that way. Like 2025 is when it's like you make different decisions and everything really changes with work and career stuff. But this is losing confidence. This is tucking your tail between your legs when it comes to money. Then we get Mercury stationing direct on the 16th. Like I said, now we're kind of getting back into our routine or schedule, figuring out what exactly we're going to do every single day. And then at the end of the year, we get our next Jupiter-Saturn square. Now, the difference between this one and the one in August is in August, Jupiter was direct and Saturn was retrograde. This time, Saturn is direct and Jupiter is retrograde. So like I said before, like in August, it was like you're trying to take these opportunities and do these things, but it's just hard. Like you're starting to have that cognitive, dissonance awareness of like, there's an issue here. This is like, you know what you have to do now. Like you need to take more, discipline, be more responsible about your beliefs and not be so lost in your head, not be so like, delusional and be like, oh my God, the world's going to end. And, here's all of these issues. It's like, you need to have some sense of responsibility over what your beliefs are. You need to take more responsibility and be more mature about how you're going to handle all of this. So this is much more of like, hey, this opportunity didn't work out. And now I've got to work my way out of that situation. And that's not bad. Again, this year is about a journey for you guys. But that's pretty much what's going on all of 2024 for the Cancer risings. Let me know what you guys are looking forward to. let me know what you're not looking forward to. I know there's a lot to not look forward to. And again, if you want to keep up to date with everything that is happening for you, go over to my website, check out the transit calendar for iCloud and for Google Calendar as well. Feel free to book a consultation with me if you want to know exactly what the next couple of years are going to look like for you. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for liking this video. Subscribe if you want to keep up to date with everything else that's going on with this year. And with that being said, I'll be seeing you guys next time.